Hey guys, what's up? It's Mike Chen. On this channel, we talked a lot about the beautiful women of ancient China. We talked about the 四大美女, or the 4 most beautiful women. We talked about beautiful concubines that eventually went on to rule China. But beauty can also be very destructive, which is why in this video, we're going to be talking about ancient Chinese ladies who were so beautiful that they brought down entire empires. Yeah, in Chinese, there is a saying called 红颜祸水, which basically means that a beautiful woman will cause terrible disasters or bring ruin to her country. There is another famous saying called 美人计, which is a strategy utilizing a beautiful woman to bring down a particular target. So here are 8 beautiful women who have brought down Chinese dynasties. Number 1, Mo Xi. Mo Xi is probably China's oldest example of a beauty bringing a dynasty to its knees. Mo Xi was the favorite concubine of King Jie, the 17th and the last ruler of the Xia dynasty. Mo Xi was described to be extremely beautiful in appearance but lacking in virtue. Before being introduced to Mo Xi, King Jie already had the reputation of being a tyrant. He treated his subjects cruelly and led a lavish lifestyle. Things got worse when he became infatuated with Mo Xi. He would often sit her on his lap while tending to state affairs, which is pretty inappropriate, and listen to her every word. It is said that Mo Xi loved the sound of silk tearing, so the king had tons of silk brought to her every day and destroyed just to make her happy. On top of that, she asked King Jie to make her a lake, yes, a lake of wine, which he did. After they were done having fun sailing around the lake of wine, Mo Xi then ordered 3,000 men to drink from it. She was even greatly entertained when the men drank too much and drowned. Eventually, the leader of the state of Shang defeated King Jie and had him exiled, and thus the Xia dynasty was replaced by the Shang dynasty. A lot of people think that Mo Xi is to blame for the fall of the Xia dynasty, but King Jie was probably already doing a pretty terrible job. Number 2, the infamous Daji. Daji is probably the most well-known ancient Chinese femme fatale. She was the favorite consort of King Zhou of the Shang dynasty. Her reputation is similar to Mo Xi's, but she's considered even worse. In Chinese legends, she is thought to be a malicious fox spirit in human form. In the classic novel Feng Shen Yan Yi, it is said that Daji's father sent her to King Zhou as an appeasement offer, but the night before she got to the capital, she was killed by an evil 9-tailed fox spirit who took over her body. The fox spirit was summoned by Nuwa, a celestial being, to corrupt King Zhou so that his people will overthrow him. While the fox spirit was able to complete this mission, it got really carried away and eventually had to be put to death by Nuwa. According to historical records, Daji was from a noble family. She was taken away to become King Zhou's concubine when he conquered her home state of Yousu. King Zhou was already past 60 when he met Daji, and he had done a decent job at running the country so far. His main weakness though was beautiful women, and he was completely smitten with Daji. He catered to Daji's every whim. Because she liked animals, so he built her a zoo filled with rare species. To amuse her, he also constructed a wine lake, and in the middle of the lake, he built a small island with a forest of meat, which is basically my Garden of Eden. I would love a forest of meat, but it has to be like fresh though. I don't want like meat hanging there for days. That's just nasty. Anyway, as you can imagine, King Zhou didn't have much time to tend to state affairs since he was too busy having fun with his concubine. When anyone denounced Daji, King Zhou would have them put to death in a cruel manner. Daji was said to be very cruel as well, as she enjoyed hearing people's cries of suffering. She even invented a torture device that burned people to death, and she would laugh as she heard their cries of agony. Eventually, the leader of another state launched an attack on King Zhou, and since the people already hated him, he was easily conquered. King Zhou then committed suicide by setting himself on fire, and the Shang dynasty came to an end. Daji was also put to death by the first king of the new dynasty, Zhou. This story also spawned another popular Chinese saying called 助纣为虐. It basically means do not put your support behind a very bad person because everything will end very horribly for you. Next, we have Bao Si, one of the most beautiful women in Chinese history. She lived during the Zhou dynasty. And if it seemed like we're going through the dynasties in chronological order, that's because we are. Since the Xia and the Shang dynasties were both brought down by beautiful women, you would think that the kings of the Zhou dynasty would learn a lesson from history, but Apparently not, because King You of Zhou was so infatuated with his favorite consort Bao Si that he eventually lost the throne. Bao Si's beauty led King You to get rid of his original queen as well as the crown prince, then made Bao Si the new queen. Bao Si bore him a son named Bo Fu, who was made the new crown prince. Though Bao Si was extremely beautiful, she never smiled. The story goes King You offered 1,000 ounces of gold to anyone who could make her smile. Someone suggested the bright idea of lighting the beacon fires that were used to summon lords and armies when Zhou came under attack by invaders. The warning beacons were lit and the nobles arrived in a hurry, only to find out that it was a false alarm. Because they were in such a rush, a lot of the soldiers' uniforms weren't put on properly, and Bao Si felt this was really funny, which made her laugh, which made King You delighted. So he continued to abuse the beacons until the nobles got fed up and stopped coming. Basically, he's the king who cried wolf way too many times to make his concubine happy. And of course, like the boy who cried wolf, Zhou did eventually come under attack for real. But this time, none of the people from the surrounding states came when the warning beacons were lit. So King You was killed in the attack. The story of Bao Si and King You is very well known because it is an iconic tale of how infatuation with a beautiful woman can bring down even the most powerful dynasty. Next up, Li Ji. History does not remember Li Ji well because her nickname is Yi Dai Yao Ji, which translates to Witch of the Age. Li Ji lived during the spring-autumn period. She was the daughter of a chief of Li Rong, an ethnic tribe from western China. Duke Xian of the state of Jin defeated the Li Rong and killed Li Ji's father before taking her and her sister to become his concubines. Duke Xian had many sons born by many different women, and Li Ji also bore him 2 sons. Li Ji was very beautiful, so she became Duke Xian's favorite. After Duke Xian's first wife passed away, he made Li Ji his official wife. It is here that the trouble began. You see, the son of Duke Xian's first wife, Prince Shenzhen, was meant to inherit the throne, but of course Li Ji wanted her own son, Xiqi, to be the heir apparent. So Li Ji made Duke Xian send his 3 sons, including Shenzhen, to the frontiers and away from the courts. She then planted ideas in the Duke's mind, making him think that Shenzhen and his other sons were planning to overthrow him. When Shenzhen came home to offer sacrifices to his dead mother, he also brought meat and wine for his father. Li Ji had the food and wine poisoned and then in a public fashion fed the meat to a dog and the wine to a servant. Both the dog and the servant died, making it look like Shenzhen had meant to poison his father. Realizing he had been framed by Li Ji and having no way to explain himself, Shenzhen committed suicide. Duke Xian also wanted to put his other 2 sons to death, but they fled the palace. Thus, Li Ji's son Xiqi was made heir apparent, and when Duke Xian died, Xiqi ascended the throne. It all seemed to go well for Li Ji, but before long, Xiqi was assassinated. His brother and Li Ji's second son was placed on the throne, but was also assassinated. Finally, Li Ji was killed as well. Li Ji is probably China's earliest example of an evil stepmother. Next on the list, we have the famous beauty Xi Shi, whose takedown of the Wu kingdom during the spring and autumn period is quite remarkable and very unconventional. First of all, Xi Shi's beauty was unparalleled. She was considered one of the 4 most beautiful women in Chinese history. Her original name was Shi Yiguang. She is said to be so beautiful that when she peered into a pond, she would dazzle the fish and they would sink to the bottom. In contrast to the other ladies on this list, Xi Shi actually has quite a good reputation. The reason is she actually helped her own state bring down an enemy state using her good looks and charm. Perhaps one of the earliest examples of a beautiful female spy. Born in the spring and autumn period, Xi Shi was the daughter of a poor peasant couple. While she was growing up, there was a big conflict between her home state Yue and another state Wu. King Fuchai of Wu defeated King Goujian of Yue. Goujian offered to serve Fuchai if he promised not to destroy the state of Yue, and Fuchai agreed. So for years, Goujian worked as the keeper of horses for Fuchai, which is a very lowly job. So low, the Monkey King actually destroyed heaven because of it. Goujian was eventually released back to Yue. Back home, Goujian decided to plan his revenge. His trusty advisor Fan Li suggested sending beautiful women to King Fuchai because everyone knew Fuchai's weakness for the ladies, and it could prevent him from tending to his official duties and weaken his state. So they selected 2 beautiful women from Yue for this mission. One of them was Xi Shi, who was known by locals to be naturally beautiful. Xi Shi trained for 3 years in etiquette, dancing, and singing. After her training was complete, Xi Shi was escorted by Fan Li to the state of Wu. What Goujian did not expect was that Xi Shi and Fan Li fell in love on their journey, because love is blind. But they chose to commit to their patriotic duties instead of each other. Everything went according to plan as Fu Chai became infatuated with Xi Shi, choosing to spend all his time and resources on her instead of state affairs. He even gave many gifts to the state of Yue since he was so grateful that he sent Xi Shi to him. Meanwhile, the state of Yue recovered and grew stronger. Xi Shi even passed along secret maps and military information back home to Yue so that Gou Jian and Fan Li could plan their attack. Eventually, Yue launched their attack and defeated the state of Wu. After his defeat, Fu Chai committed suicide. Having fulfilled his duty, Fan Li retired from office and became a recluse. But no one knows for sure what happened to Xi Shi. Some say she reunited with Fan Li and lived happily ever after. Others say she was drowned in a river since she completed her mission and was no longer any use to Yue. A third theory said that she went back to her village and drowned washing silk in the river. Xi Shi may have brought down an empire, but she is remembered fondly for her patriotism and her selfless sacrifice. She is immortalized in many Chinese poems and sayings, and she is truly a larger-than-life figure. Next, we have Zhao Feiyan and Zhao Hede, two sisters who wreaked havoc in the palace during Emperor Cheng's reign in the Han Dynasty. After their birth parents died at a young age, Zhao Feiyan and Zhao Hede were taken in and raised by the housekeeper of a rich family. As they grew older, they worked as maidservants for Princess Yang, the sister of Emperor Cheng. During a feast held by Princess Yang, Zhao Feiyan caught the attention of Emperor Cheng as she was dancing. She took her and her sister to his palace to be his concubines. They became favorites quickly, and the emperor's official wife and empress and another prominent concubine fell out of favor. The Zhao sisters then accused the empress and that concubine of witchcraft, and both of them were disposed. Zhao Feiyan became empress, and the two Zhao sisters ruled the palace together. However, they faced a big problem because neither of them could produce an heir for the emperor. As they got older, not sparing any sons would damage their position in court. It is said that Zhao Feiyan engaged in adulterous relationships with other men in hopes of bearing a son. The sisters were also thought to prevent other concubines from giving birth and murdered any children born to the emperor by other women. When Emperor Cheng suddenly passed away, there was an investigation launched to investigate his death as well as the circumstances surrounding the imperial infant deaths. Fearing the consequences of her actions, Zhao Hede committed suicide. Though Empress Zhao Feiyan wasn't implicated at first, she was eventually demoted to a commoner for her malicious actions and committed suicide as well. While the Zhao sisters were cruel, their beauty immortalized them. Next, we have Zhang Lihua, who is blamed for taking down the Qin dynasty, which is the last dynasty of the northern and southern dynasties period, and of course where my ancestors came from apparently. Zhang Lihua was from a poor military family. She entered the palace first as a servant, but when Crown Prince Chen Shubao saw her, he was struck by her beauty and took her as his concubine. Chen Shubao became the emperor after his father died, and he gave Zhang the title of Guifei, the highest rank for imperial consorts. Chen Shubao had a similar reputation to many last rulers. He neglected state affairs and indulged in an excessive lifestyle. He built extravagant pavilions for him and his favorite consorts and spent his days feasting and partying with them. Zhang Lihua's beauty was described in legendary terms. She was very good at taking care of her appearance and dressing up nicely. Her hair was supposedly so shiny that it reflected light like a mirror. It was said that when she was dressed up, she looked like an immortal being floating in the air. In addition to her good looks, she was said to have excellent memory, knew how to read people's minds, and was clever with words. In other words, she was a skilled manipulator and had both the emperor and the imperial staff eating out of her hands. Because she was so smart, Chen Shubao would often adopt her ideas when it came to state affairs. Chen wasn't really interested in his duties, so he would often sit Zhang Lihua on his lap and discuss with her when making important decisions. Knowing her influence, everyone started to bribe Zhang in order to get access to the emperor. Since Chen Shubao was occupied with his lavish lifestyle, he didn't notice when the Sui dynasty launched an attack. Apparently, his generals sent an urgent message requesting support, but Chen Shubao left a letter on Zhang Lihua's nightstand and forgot to even open it. And so the Sui dynasty took over and Zhang Lihua was beheaded because Sui officials officials were afraid she would bewitch the new leaders with her beauty and talent. And finally, we have the beautiful Yang Guifei, or imperial consort Yang. Like Xi, she is one of the 4 great Chinese beauties. She was said to be so beautiful that flowers turned away from her in shame when she walked past. Unlike some of the other ladies we mentioned, Yang did not really cause the end of a dynasty, but she is still blamed for stirring up a rebellion that caused millions of deaths and severely weakened the Tang dynasty. Famous for her voluptuous figure, she was the beloved concubine of the aging Tang Emperor Xuanzong. Yang Guifei's original name was Yang Yuhuan, and at 17 years old, she became the consort of Li Mao, Emperor Xuanzong's 18th son. 2 years later, the emperor met Yang Yuhuan and was smitten by her beauty. Of course, this is like a Greek tragedy because the father loved the son's wife. And of course, this would not seem proper. So Yang applied to be released from her marriage and became a Taoist nun, which was really just her excuse to get out of the marriage. Even though she was a nun in name, Yang never moved away from the palace and frequently received visits from the emperor. After 7 years, Yang finally became Xuanzong's concubine. She was appointed to the rank of Guifei, or honored consort, and that's how she became known as Yang Guifei. Random fact, Yang Guifei's favorite fruits are lychees, an exotic fruit only found in the south. So the emperor had soldiers rush lychees to the palace on horseback. Like literally, they would ride the horses so fast that many horses and even soldiers died trying to get Yang Guifei her lychees. In addition, many of her family members received imperial titles. Yang Guifei's second cousin, Yang Guozhong, was made chief minister and was eventually promoted to chancellor. Yang Guozhong was a corrupt official who liked to flatter the emperor. He often had conflicts with a general named An Lushan, who was also favored by Emperor Xuanzong and commanded great military power in northeast China. Yang Guozhong repeatedly provoked An Lushan until the tension came to a head, with An Lushan launching a massive rebellion. Emperor Xuanzong fled the capital along with Yang Guifei, Yang Guozhong, and other Yang family members escorted by imperial guards. At this point, everyone is mad at the Yang family for causing the rebellion, so the imperial guards got fed up and killed Yang Guozhong and other members of the Yang clan. They wanted Yang Guifei dead too because they blamed her for the Yang's rise to power. Though he initially refused, but with the country in turmoil, Emperor Xuanzong had no choice but to consent. Yang Guifei was then strangled to death as to not mess up her appearance. So there you go, guys. Those are 9 beautiful women who brought down Chinese dynasties. It's really interesting how these extraordinarily beautiful women had such bad reputations. And if you noticed, most of these beautiful women with bad reputations all died horrible deaths. That leads to another famous Chinese saying called Hong Yan Bo Ming, which means beautiful women will have tragic fates. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and on this channel we're going to be doing a lot more historical and cultural videos. So if you guys have any topic suggestions, please list them in the comments below, and if you guys like their suggestions, vote it up so we can see it. And personally, I'm really mad at Zhang Lihua, who supposedly brought down the Qin dynasty. Actually, I'm really mad at grandfather Chen Shubao. I mean, grandfather, whatever, to the 20 power Chen Shubao, who really didn't want to be a king, was just kind of like goofed around. And then this lady came, and anyway, I'm just saying, if they haven't been so corrupt, if they haven't been such failures, then who knows? Maybe the Qin dynasty will still be ruling today, and I'd be like, you know, imperial prince or something. All right, guys, thank you all so much for watching this video. I'll see you later.